How's everyone doing?
Hey everybody, this is Ann. Welcome back to Reaper Pro Tips on this glorious Thursday. How are you all? This is me, of course, Ann, with your co-host disembodied voice, Justin. Kiri is here, but it is bone chewing morning rather than squeaky ball morning, so no squeaks today. Hello, and thank you for the resub there, Clavicus. I see you sneakily resubbing for 6 months before I even get on the screen. Well, I'm thanking you anyway. So there. Happy Thursday. Yeah, I know, it's almost the weekend. For me, that means that's actually a deadline because I've got my dog club's national event is this weekend. And of course, we had to cancel it and hold it virtually. So we're holding a virtual dog show, which I spent all of last night judging. And we'll have to yet do some more judging today. So I spent all day looking at puppies, which was fun. But yeah, so, I'll check. It's probably Windows trying to sneak a march on me, D. Clearman. Hold on. Because I'm loud this morning, so, if Windows is not acknowledging my loudness, something must be done. One sec. Pretty sure that it'll turn out that Windows is just silly. Windows, are you silly? No, Windows is not silly. Huh. It says my microphone's good. I didn't change my microphone at all. Check your volume on your device, I guess, D. Clearman. Because, yeah, my volume is up where it is, where it was yesterday. Okay, gotta close all of this. What the heck? Get off my thing. I hate it when I click on things and things. Everybody else, yeah, what's this sound like on everybody else's? Is D. Clearman just an oddity this morning? Sound fine for scrying eye? Really weird, D. Clearman. I just started Val. I started a little late. Kiri had a bit of a Kiri emergency today. Earlier. So it always sets us back at least 5 minutes. Hey, GVD. It's good to see you. And Jelly. Reaper love for you, Clavicus. Hey, Soltor. Sounds okay? Volume's good here? Not as loud as normal? I don't know. Yeah, it's weird because I never touch. Like, my microphone stays right where it's at. So the only thing I can do is look at stuff here on my desktop audio and stuff like that. But I mean, I can look at my Yeti mic on my mixer, but again, I haven't changed it. So it seems weird to me that it would be weird. You officially have too many now? Oh, that's funny. I don't know. I guess there's that flipping. It's a tipping point, right, Jellyware? It's a paint tipping point where you look at this in dismay at all of the paint and you're like, how the heck am I going to organize that? That's the point where you tip over. Sounds good there too. Thanks, Dimp. I haven't met you before, I think. Or Dimple. That's what you are. You're Dimple. I can read Leet. Sometimes I have to actually make myself, like, kind of read it out, parse it out. But yes, Dimple's a cute name. I like it. Welcome. All right, cool. Well, let's get to Sphinx painting now that we've had our morning chat session. Alrighty. Sphinx-ish. So I got a question for you guys since I have you all here. Justin, how many people do we have right now in the stream?
We currently have 35.
All right,
but it's in the beginning it grows pretty fast. So here in like a minute or so it'll jump again.
Oh, okay. I was just gonna ask, and maybe I'll ask later on also. And so anybody who talks now can refrain from talking later if you'd like. But what I'm curious, organizing paint and miniatures is definitely a side hobby. It's the sub hobby, when you look at the meta diagram of the hobbying. So what I want to know, guys, is I was thinking about and talking to Justin this morning about does it matter what we paint? So do you guys like it when I paint monsters, or do you like it when I'm painting more the player characters? Like, what's your preference? If I did a preponderance of one or the other, Because I'm definitely once my Reaper order gets here, which I think is tomorrow, I'm gonna have a ton of player characters and NPC type characters to do. So I kind of am curious if it matters to you guys or if you just like to see me paint, or if you have a preference, player characters or monster types. Yeah, got a lot of both. Kaz likes player characters. You're so new that you just enjoy it in general. Okay, so Thar, that's cool. Both mix. All right. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I usually just mix it up a little bit. Do I come here? I mix it up just a little bit. All right. Yeah. So there are a couple people who are definitely like more for the characters. There's one, Clavicus likes it when I do monsters, and Mistimp likes monsters. So it looks like it's pretty even spread, at least among, I consider you guys kind of our core audience, or like you're our fans. A lot of you are the people who show up for my personal private streams on twitch.tv/paintingbig. So I'm just curious. I'm always curious about like kind of the demographics of the thing, and you know, okay, cool. Oh yeah, David K. I mean, okay, I can discuss techniques on any model in the world, but yes, this let me go a lot more into bigger eyes, which we really can't do on the character models, right? So totally, that's a thing. Hold on, adjust there I am. Much better. But yeah. I need a random encounter chart for miniature painting. Yeah, like every day, Anne has somebody roll a d6 on the chart to discuss what we'll paint today. You guys are so funny. Yeah, you do have an overthinking issue with colors, Val. You really just need to pick one, stick with it, and learn it. Like, you're gonna get more mileage from that, really. Instead of changing your mind, stick one, that's your base color, and then all you have to do is pick highlights and shadows. And don't double check yourself, and don't second guess yourself. It's just gonna put you back. I mean, sometimes with mini painting, you just got to go for it. And remember, I mean, obviously, if it's a one-shot character that you're never going to get another chance to paint, that's different. But a lot of these miniatures, you could always get another copy. So just keep that in mind when you are thinking about, you know, if you're kind of freaking out and second-guessing what color you chose or whatever. You play monsters, yeah, Dabber. I'm with you. I had a Gnollish Paladin once. She was a lawful neutral, I think. I really like gnolls. I like gnolls as player character races. Not evil, like neutral gnolls. 1, 2, 3. That was a very short game, but I still liked it. She had a great spear. Great big long spears were good at that time. I forget which edition it was. 3rd, I think. Oh, the paw painting only just started. Like, I got a base coat on there. That's it. So don't worry. The paw painting extended a little bit. It's going to get a lot different today. Because although I started with the straight up Ready Flesh, it is going to, it's just a little bit too orangey yellow. It's too bright, too saturated. So I'm going to add some white to it right off the gate and mute it down. So it's more like a lion fur color, which is actually the color it should go. It should end up a really good lion fur color. We're going to see if I'm right about that. I may need to add a little bit of a yellow, but I'm going to take about 6 drops of Ready Flesh. I'm going to add 2 drops of white. So it's about a 3-to-1. Or I mix it up and see what it looks like. And adding the white to it means also it's going to cover better. There used to be Coating Horse. There used to be. Back when I started with the company, when we only had Pro Paint and we didn't have Master Series yet, we put metal skulls into every paint because, well, we wanted an agitator. Like, Ed had decided that he was the only paint company that wanted agitators in his paint. So we put a metal skull and we had the casting department, you know, just cast up a bunch of skulls. But then when Master Series started and it started getting really popular, we had to stop because essentially what happened is the paint, we were flipping so much paint that we had one caster being paid to full time do nothing other than cast skulls in order to keep up. And that was completely untenable from a business practice. You don't want to pay somebody like, you know, 30K a year to produce something for free. Right? You're paying all that labor cost and you haven't translated that into the paint. So essentially, we had to stop that. And that's when Ed and Dave started looking around and we settled on like volcanic glass beads at that time because they were heavier and they were inexpensive. So back in the day, if you get an old bottle of paint Coating Horse and you dump out the paint, you will find a metal skull. Yes. Val. Well, you need magenta too. But see, okay, Val, you can go there. But you need to kind of understand probably like, like right there, clear red isn't going to do everything. You have to understand that there are two different colors of every primary. So you actually need 2 reds, 2 yellows, 2 blues, and phthalo green if you can get it. Otherwise, you won't. Your mileage may vary. There's in art paints there are 2 different versions of every primary, a warm and a cool one. They did this to make things easier as far as mixing goes. But if you don't know that, that's why clear magenta and clear red are both necessary. Magenta is a very cold red. It's almost a purple. Hello, Sleria. Thank you for the resub. 5 months. Awesome. Awesome. Yeah, we're already, remember tomorrow is our AMA, guys. So I'm going to sit and answer questions from the AMA channel in the Reaper Discord. And we are going to give away a big mini. Three times. 3 big minis. We picked out the big mini yesterday and ascertained that there were adequate supplies of the big mini. And so right now, these subs that we're getting right now are actually saving up toward our next AMA. Now I need to get a little bit of this ebony flesh, which was my base color, mixed up so that I can blend that paw in. Honestly, Val, what I think that... Well, it might be more useful to you, Val, to pick a rainbow of colors. Like, okay, make yourself a starter set or pick up the Reaper starter set and use those colors. But choose a skin tone. Probably I would recommend 90-44, tan skin. Choose a black and a white. Choose a gold and a silver and a good middle brown or a couple of middle browns. I'd probably say 90, 99, 91, I'd probably say russet brown and ruddy leather if I had to pick only 2 browns and then add rich leather in as well. Then you'll have a yellow and kind of a neutral and kind of a reddish brown selection. And then pick a good red, a good yellow, a good green, orange, all of these colors. Pick something versatile. You don't even need it to be clear red. You could just pick something like heraldic red, which is, a decent, middle red. And learn what those colors do. I mean, you could also get the clear brights. But in general, I mean, you could go and read my PDF on clear brights, and that might help you a bit. But I don't know. I think... I don't know if that's a good, I mean, I don't know. Maybe it would help you, Val. I'm just... The problem is that you're going hardcore. You're going from, from too many choices to, too few choices, right? And that doing the clear bright mixing thing is kind of hardcore. I mean, and it is a lot of work. I mean, there's a reason I reach for my pre-mixed colors every day, even though I can mix everything from clear brights. Honestly, Val, I think it's more, like I said, if you're gonna, you start a project like your succubus, commit to a color, imperial or amethyst purple, learn how adding different things to those colors shades and highlights it. Like I told you, you can use skin tones to highlight your amethyst purple. You could use white. You could use an off-white. All of those things are going to give you different results. And learning to mix with clear brights isn't necessarily going to make you better working it with your amethyst purple. So... hold on. Yeah, and of course I haven't fixed, I haven't fixed all that yet. Val has a good point in that the new tier people kind of are waiting for me to have time to fix all my thingies. But yeah, I mean, Deke Clearman has a point. Go to the article about which making a color wheel with MSP, essentially. I can go and I'm just so freaking busy, guys. I have on my to-do list for this month to go and open up all that past content. It just takes so much time. I've actually been in contact with Patreon about this. Like I posted on their, problems with Patreon thread. But yeah, it's something what I found out from doing that is that this problem where you create a new tier And because it's a new tier, all of the past content isn't flagged for it. There's no general flag to just go back and say, hey, include this new, $45 tier in all the previous levels. There's nothing. You have to go back and manually adjust every post. So, yeah, there is a Reaper Discord. Yes, and the AMA channel is where we drop questions for that, for my AMA tomorrow. So, there's a lot of good questions in there. There's a lot. Like, I'm going to have to bust my butt trying to get through it all. But yeah, so I have to go back and adjust. For those of you who took on my coaching tier, I need to open up access. And I just need to do it in blocks. And make the time. And that's one of those tasks where it takes a lot of time, but once it's done, it's done. So that's a relief. It's just making the time. It might have to wait till the weekend to get another bunch opened up. But yeah, D. Clearman has a point. If you do want to ever go to a very limited mixing palette with MSPs and you're a patron of mine, go and look at the ones that I say that make a good color wheel. Because those are maybe your best mixing colors for the most part. And my Patreon is patreon.com/paintingbig. We have a lot of info on there. A lot. If you think you hear me talk a lot of info on here, you should read my Patreon. I have PDFs and I have videos. Is my AC like even working? Like, I really don't know. Anyway. But yeah, so let me see. Let me get Sphinx in focus here. Might need to actually open the door because it's getting a little stuffy in here and I don't know if the AC is actually functional. One second, guys. It's been kind of weird lately. And I don't want little dog and myself to get really warm in here because it is kind of stuffy. Yeah, it doesn't appear to be functional. That's what I thought, Kiri. I thought we were non-functional. Uh-oh. How about that? Is that going to be okay, Kiri? Alright, so guys, I turned on a fan on really low, so let me know if you get any noise or weirdness. If you get noise, I'll turn the fan off. It's just a warm day here, and my AC is conked out for some reason. So, okay, the paw is not even like, okay, this is not a wow on the paw. It's just a paw. Like, this is base-coated, Val, with a little bit of shading. It is really not a lot. You can see it. So all I did was add white to my my ruddy flesh. Yeah, now my fans are here. Okay, good. Okay, good. Good. Yeah, we're just getting a little bit warm in here, and when the doglet gets warm, she gets restless, so I don't want the little Kiri to get too restless here. All right, so yeah, so all we did was added white to our ruddy flesh, so we can get it more of a tan color, more of a good basic lion color. And then we got out our ebony flesh, and we mixed those a little bit together. I just spot mixed it, and just kind of put it down in lines where the shadows would be, which is between the bones of the hand, right? If you do this, you can definitely see shadows, right? So that's what we're doing. We're suggesting that very roughly, and then we're going to work it up again. This is a David K. You know this is a painting show, right? There are a lot of things that look great as are. This is true. Some people just buy miniatures and put them on their shelves and never paint them, and that's cool. You could just collect them. They look really awesome as sculptures, but some of us like to paint. So I'm going to bring this color in a bit more. I'm going to try to, it's just a simple blend. It's like I used this same color to highlight the ebony flesh up here. So when I go down here and want to blend up to a lighter color, it makes sense to use the same color, just treat it slightly differently. In this case, we add white. So it's going to make it look like it belongs to the Sphinx that way. Trust me, it really is just a base coat right now. And in person, it's kind of crappy. In my opinion. But honestly, Val, with you, you just need to paint. Like, for you, I honestly would... I think I said this the other day, but I would put aside the big projects. I would just sit and paint. Just paint. Figure out where your weaknesses are. Instead of worrying about colors and overthinking it, like, paint a simple adventuring character, the best you can. Doesn't matter if the colors are weird or don't match great or whatever, just paint it and learn from it. I think the problem that some people get into is that they just try to accelerate too much. And this, unfortunately, can be, made worse by shows like mine where, I know what I'm doing. I've been doing it for 30 years. And it's cool to get excited. And honestly, these techniques, if you're a beginner, you can grok these techniques. But if you're having issues, take a step back, I guess is the point. It's like, some people, I show them layering and they get it. And they work on it and they get really good at it in a very short period of time. But some people have problems with it and then they need to take a step back and maybe work on it slightly differently. Hey, thanks for the resub, Dogfather. Awesome. Yeah, Scrying Eye, that's about what I would say. You want to use a really transparent. Off topic, mini with abs. Any tips I have for abs? Highlight them. So abs. Wait, I have a wolf with abs, although I haven't highlighted his abs. Here, Mr. Werewolf is coming out here. Val recognizes this werewolf. So when you have a mini with abs, get a light, Queen Teeny. Like, if I tilt it so that this wolf is kind of like, my big light source is coming from this direction. It's pointing this way. And I can see very clearly that there's a band of shadow. You can even see it on the bottom of each of these muscles. And then there's kind of a highlight on the top. That's how you really paint abs. But the thing with skin is you don't want to vary it too much. Especially if it's a female model. With a guy, you can actually punch it up a bit heavier. Because you want, women, we have to work hard to get abs. And they usually don't stand out like guys do. Because it's harder for us to lose the body fat. But, so you really want to have your basic skin color all over. And then a little bit of just a little bit darker shadow on the underside of each ab. And just a little bit of highlight on the upper side. And if you really want her to look cut, you put a little streak of real high highlight right next to the shadow. So, really high. But otherwise, and if they look like they're just bubbles, like you don't get any blending, do like a wash of your base skin color over it, except with like wick off the wash. Don't leave it to pool. Kind of pull it off with your brush, so it's just a layer of paint over the top. That should smooth things down. Yeah, well, I think we all have those, David. Oh, it's a lady orc. Awesome. Yeah, so she may actually have, like, more defined abs. That's up to you to decide. Alright, just making sure I'm keeping up here. 1 second. Yeah, Jellyware, when you're painting transparent, those transparent models, it really is a matter of less is more. The less paint you put on it, the better it's going to look. Like, you're going to keep the transparency. And you will discover that if you put like my water weird, which I do not have here, I don't think. But the water weird I painted for Reaper, I painted that stone base of it all like opaque, right? And what that happened then was that because I'd cut off any light coming in, the bottom part of the transparency actually looks darker. So mess around a little bit and see that that's a thing. The more you cover with opaque paints, that's going to create shadows inside the transparency. So always remember that. And if you put too much opaque paint on there, it's going to totally shut it down. So, good morning, Varl. Yeah. So, all right, let me grab. I'm getting distracted. There's a lot of questions. We're going to be in good form for the AMA tomorrow if you guys keep flinging random questions at me. I'm going to put one more drop. I took some of my mix of the Ready Flesh over because I had a big puddle of it. So I just transferred a few brushfuls, like 3 drops, over to here. And now I'm going to throw another drop of white in there and see if I like it for a lion color to highlight this fur, to bring this fur up higher. I also think I'm going to give her kind of like pads on the underside of her paws. She doesn't have sculpted pads. But you could choose to paint pads down here, because she does have sections. She has sections on the underside of her hand, just like. So I think I can make paw pads, since this hand is a little bit visible. But yes, thank you to everybody lately, by the way, who's been helping out my Patreon. We're almost to my next level. I just need another couple $100, I think, to get to my my next gold level, which lets me go IKEA shopping and reorganize my office, which so desperately needs it. We have such a tiny little room here, split between David and I for a painting studio, and it's where I do all my streams every morning. But I desperately need kind of a revamp. Like, I just feel so unorganized. So I just wanted to give her some paw pads. I'm going to give her a big paw pad now here on the heel of her hand. So we have a proper paw pad. Just felt like giving her pads. I'm kind of freehanding them, in that a lot of this isn't sculpted. I'm just kind of following a little bit of a guideline that Julie actually kept separated portions of the hand, the paw. So paw pads. I could make them pink if I wanted. But I don't know that she's the type to have pink paw pads. Oh, yeah. Yeah, LEDs work great. Yeah, all the random question. Random question, how do you stop your fine brushes from hooking? Oh, Sliria, you're using synthetics. If your brush are hooking at the tips, you're not using a natural hairbrush. If you are using a synthetic, you're always going to get a hook. There's no way to stop it. It is a natural happening. And the reason it happens, I talked about this the other day, but I'll talk about it again because I love to talk about it. So this is a synthetic hairbrush. See that fuzziness, that white fuzziness at the tip? So what's happening here is that synthetic hairbrushes are plastic. And so they don't wear like a normal hair. They can't. So they wear faster. And they abrade at the tip. So you get the fuzziness, and then you get the hook. And this flat has not been used enough to get the hook, but it's definitely going there. It's like I can see it kind of like wanting to start. So this is just what happens, because you're painting with plastic threads, and plastic threads just don't wear as well as a natural hair. A natural hair is used to, like, getting stroked and, brushed and done like that. It's not going to do this fraying thing that plastic does. So eventually it is inevitable, no matter how good care you take of your plastic brushes, they are going to die. And this is why they're cheap. When buying brushes for mini painting, you get what you pay for. And what I always tell people is that, you're going to pay what, $5 or something for a Reaper Taklon, maybe 2 or 3 per brush for Taklons. You might get some really cheap ones at the craft store. But, and you're going to kill that brush within maybe a month, maybe 2 if you're really good, depending on how much you paint. And then you come to the Kolinsky Sable brushes, which are the racehorses, the thoroughbreds of the paintbrush world, which never hook, ever, unless you leave them in your paint water jar nose down, which you should never do, because it's a huge cardinal sin, really, of painting. And these guys, like this one has been around. I've been using this brush for 2 years now, and it's still a razor tip. And these are more expensive, so people tend to shy away from them. But if you don't leave your brushes sitting in your paint water jar, and you don't dip your whole brush in your paint all the time, you honestly could buy one of these and probably keep it in pretty good condition very easily. And these are $15. So it's like, I could have a $5 cheapo brush that dies on me in a month, or I could have a $15 awesome brush that lasts for 2 years. So, yeah. Something close to Ready Flesh. The only thing close is also going to be in the Bones line in Ara. There is nothing similar to it in any other paint line I do. I mean, maybe Chestnut Gold, but Chestnut Gold doesn't have the vibrancy. I think the closest thing to it is... Polished Leather is close but lighter. It's kind of halfway between Polished Leather and Rich Leather. It's a weird one. It's like you're splitting hairs between those paints, but they're all very useful in this kind of thing. Anyway, that's the brush thing. So, I mean, Right, exactly. And that's another way to do it over anneal, right? You could just buy cheap brushes and expect to go through them fast. But if you want a brush that never hooks and that keeps an amazing tip for all of its life, and you are not like too brutal on your brushes, like you've learned to care for your brushes at least at a basic level, so worth it. So worth it. I mean, I'll never paint with anything else. When I do terrain, then I go to the synthetic flat, right, and expect to wear it out. But otherwise, what I'm doing, I can't do eyes like that with anything less than a Kolinsky, you know. So it's like you got to ask yourself, essentially set up what are your goals in mini painting, and if you want to get good, I would advise just picking up one really good brush. Just get one, try it out, keep it for eyeballs and fine details, and then, you know, otherwise use your other cheap brushes, especially if you're hard on brushes. Then that's totally understandable. But I think you'll find that with a great brush like these, it makes the hobby easier for you, which is why I say that when you buy a good brush, you level up almost instantly, because for the first time you will be able to very precisely put paint where you want. And maybe you'll realize that your problem isn't that you have crappy brush control. You probably have better brush control than you think. Your problem is that your brush is not working with you. It's working against you, and the paint doesn't like to come off plastic bristles the way it likes to come off natural hair. Yeah, actually, Coating Horse, the Reaper Kolinsky's, the black handle brush. I actually recommend, they're a grade 2 Kolinsky, so they're a little bit less expensive than your grade 1 Kolinsky, which is the Da Vinci's and Raphael's that I've been using. But I recommend the 05, the 0/5 size, or the 0/10 size. Those are the closest to the 05 is probably the closest to this one. Maybe it's a little shorter, and the 10 gets even smaller. It's more like this. But they're really fine, good detail brushes, and they should be good quality for you to start with. And then you can use those and kind of figure out, you know, is it worth it, right? And it really depends on the kind of painting you do too. Yeah, they don't, right? Yeah, you know, that's just it. When you get what you pay for in art. In art supplies, art hobbies, art everything, you get what you pay for. There's a reason that folk art paint is so cheap. There's a reason that the brushes that you get in 10 or 50 packs are so cheap. They are not great. They're good to kind of get your toe into the water. But then if you try, with miniatures especially, right, you're trying to do all these fine details. Using a crappy brush to paint canvas is different from using a crappy brush to paint little tiny highlights in eyes. I mean, you guys can see that it's kind of like, can be a little bit. Yeah, no problem. Yeah, or you can just pick up one too, Slyria. I mean, it's like I said, the Reaper 05, the Reaper 10, or I use Da Vinci. That's a very high class. That's the class 1, grade 1 Kolinsky sable. It's the highest grade of red sable. Raphael is another good company that I really like. I use their 8408 series. Do remember that when you are using a very, very thin brush, you need to thin your paint. And that's half of also getting good effects in miniature painting. I could go on and on and on and on and on and on. But right now, we'll just try to mix a highlight and actually get on with this. All right, so what I've got now is I'm running into the fact that really Ready Flesh does have a lot of brown in it. So when I'm mixing straight up white with it, I get a tan, but it's not very golden. And so it's kind of more like a really beige, like off beige grayed outline. It's not as vibrant as I would like it to be. Solution for this, if you want, you can actually go up to blonde hair, which is very close to this, but a bit more yellowy. Or you can use something like tanned leather and amber gold, which are also, and blonde and golden blonde, which is a triad that's early on in Master Series. It's 90, 31, 32, and 33. I actually created those colors to paint lions with. They work great. I instead am going to just add a little bit of lantern yellow, tiny bit, to my color that is not yellow enough, my Ready Flesh plus white. And that is going to warm it up, hopefully not too much. It's going to make it more of a golden color. Yeah, there you go. Now we got a really nice golden tan. Almost like the old Griffin tan from Pro Paints. Varl, they're probably using the Raphael's, this one. It is a thick brush, which is very large, but it has a super razor tip. You can see that. They come in two series. There's the 8404 and the 8408. The 8408, I believe, is the finer tapered point, which is what I like because it's what I do when I'm working with thin paint. I like long, thin brushes. The nice thing about these, this is a size 1, by the way, to give you an idea. So it is very large. I mean, with my finger next to it, you can see it's almost as long as my fingernail. So it's a big brush. Nice thing about them is they can hold a lot of moisture in the ferrule. I never load it up with paint that much, but I do like to keep a little bit of moisture in the brush itself. So I've showed before how after I dip my brush in the water and rinse it out, I just do this. Thus I'm not squeezing out the brush so much, I'm just like reshaping the tip. And there's still water kind of just sitting in here, just a little bit. So that when I dip it into here, it's not like all dry here. If it's totally dry here, that's when you're going to get a problem with maybe your paint not coming off your brush as easily or drying in the brush a little easier. So yeah, it's actually a really good lion triad or leopard triad or anything like that. Yeah. Yeah, Varl. Yeah, so probably you want to go to Raphael. You want to look at the 8404 and the 8408 and decide which is going to be your best mileage. I really love the razor tip on this because I can do anything with this brush. It's big enough for me to do like big brush stuff, but it's also fine enough for me to do the tiniest highlights. So I really do, I was a Da Vinci fangirl, poster girl for Da Vinci before this, but I have to admit, I love this brush. So alright, let's get our paws highlighted with this brand new golden color that we've made. I'm going to add more water to it because I added more white to it. And those things go hand in hand. Oh yeah, Coating Horse. Ever since a friend of mine got cancer and the doctors thought that brush licking may have been part of it, I don't do that anymore. I actually cured myself. I used to be a brush licker, but after that happened to my friend, I cured myself of it. So now I just do the squeeze thing with my hand with water, and it works great. So if you haven't seen me do the squeeze thing, I'll show you in a second. I pretty much got into the habit of reshaping my brush after I rinse it out with one movement to be efficient. David still licks his brushes, and it like drives me nuts. But you know, you cannot make someone change. You can only suggest, be a good example. But yeah, I no longer will ever lick my brush. Yeah. Yeah, it's just like, your brush is never fully, most stuff is shifting non-toxic now, but you just never know. You just never know. And why would you do it? Like, it's not food. Why are you putting it in your mouth? I don't know. Just me. But like I said, I had an excellent, example of why I shouldn't do it put in front of me. So it wasn't easy for me to change the habit. Once I figured out a way to get a good tip on my brush that worked for me, then it became a much simpler. So like now, after I rinse out my brush, I just do this. I just pull it through my fingers there. You can see the water that got squeezed out. And now my brush is great. It's got a perfect tip again, and it's still got some fluid in the bristles. You can see the gleam of the water. I've got a little piece of paint there. And then I just reload and go on. So I've gotten so good at that pull my brush through my hand thing that, I just kind of do it like that. And that's just what I do now. So it's a nice, I get as good a tip on it as I ever did doing brush licking. So, and I don't have to like stick the brush in my mouth. So I'm just highlighting these little toes, highlighting toes. It's actually beautiful here, Saltor. Like we had, I think 85 yesterday. It was lovely. Yes, Griffin Tan is also meant to be that way. That's why it's Griffin. Yeah, you can do it any way you like. I just find that, it's like, for me, it's very easy to grab the brush like this, do this, and then, just pull it up. So whatever works for you to break the brush licking habit, it should be a natural gesture that's easy for you to perform, depending on how dexterous or non-dexterous you are. But you can always rewire your habits. You're never stuck with one way of doing things. People like to say, "Oh, well, I've gotten in the habit now. Like it's an unbreakable thing," and it's like, oh, you can totally rewire that with a new habit. You know, you may never lose the old habit, but you can totally like short circuit it. Which is a funny thing that habit science has revealed to us, guys. Once you have a habit, it actually stays with you. And the way to break it is to figure out what triggers it specifically. And then remove the trigger. Which actually I was tickled to find that out, because it's a lot like dog training. When you have a dog who's like reactive or has a bad behavior, there's almost always a trigger for it. Even if you haven't like figured it out yet. And the key to getting around that behavior is to rewire that trigger, to interrupt that trigger, or remove it from the environment. Or distract the dog right as the trigger is coming, so that the dog has to, like, it gets kind of like shaken out of its behavior loop. Yeah, I mean, you could also you could do a palm thing. Like if you have enough scrunch in your hand, you could do that. Really, anyway. I mean, the other way to do it, I mean, I honestly can just do this. That's just as good. Just don't squeeze the water out. You know, you just kind of want to run your hand across it. You can see the water came out. And what you really want is just, you don't want to squeeze too hard. You don't want to squeeze, really. And you want to see a perfect tip after you do it. And I really find that that's helping me a lot. It lets me work with a little bit of thicker paint sometimes than I should be able to get away with. And still have it come off my brush pretty well, because the water that's still in the bristles is mixing with it. I'm going to bring this highlight up a little more, up on the arm. Remember, we're trying to blend in one surface into the other, so we want to work with all of our tan colors that we've mixed up and work it up into the human skin. Which is great, because the tan that I mixed with the Ruddy Flesh plus white is a lot similar to the Ruddy Flesh plus lemon yellow that we were using to highlight the skin. So it makes it easy to blend these two colors in. And then I've decided to make the fur on the back of her arm a little lighter. Oh, one second. I'm going to turn off the fan. The Kiri has given me that I'm annoyed at this fan look and walked out of the room. 1 second, guys. I like it. I like it, little dog. Alright, there you go. Yeah, I turned it off. Are you going to like... You're so silly. You're such a silly dog. You are. You gonna settle again now the evil fan is off? You're so... Like, our old dog loved fans. Like, Leo would, like, just lie in front of fans. He adored them. But apparently Kiri is not a fan dog. She's not a fan of fans. Let's see... Yeah, supposedly it gets warm or cold here in the winter, but not, like, super cold, which is awesome for me. Make sure your hands are clean and dry when you point the brush. Yeah, of course. So, you know, you should always wash your hands before you mini paint anyway. Do I come here often? Because, you know, you tend to get a lot of oils building up on your fingers. And that can, if you're handling the mini, that can make paint not want to stick as well. So I always wash my hands before I paint. Yes, eating potato chips while painting, not so much. Yes. Yes. Yeah, a moist paper towel would be okay. Like, looking here. Yeah, that's a good point. If it's getting cold, guys, now is the time to, 1, order paint, and 2, prime models outside. My art school sucked, D. Clearman. I got that from a color book, but not from art school. I don't remember that exercise, at least, from any of my color theory class. it's a useful like thing. If you're ever like say you're looking at what you're doing with, let's say that COVID is over and you can go to art museums again, or I guess you could look online at old paintings. But when I go to art museums, or art shows, I take a lot of inspiration from paintings I see, and usually it's color based, and I do exactly what D. Clearman just said, which is, if I really like the color scheme in a painting, I'll kind of identify like the 2 or 3 main colors in it, and then I'll think of like MSP colors that are close to that. And I usually actually won't go beyond that. I usually won't go down to the 6 colors and the 12 colors and all the rest of that declearing. Because after I've got those, I find that after I have the 3 principal colors in a painting, 2 or 3, everything else is just introducing neutrals or black and white. Like, it's at that point, I don't think it's the 6 color breakdown is so useful. Slyria, I have, my brush and my palette are linked on the Reaper, I think it's !tools. So the well palette. The most important thing are the brushes, which I talk about a lot, but my well palette is also, like, necessary for me painting. I do use a wet palette on occasion. I've even used one on stream, but it's my least favorite palette, because I am a control freak, and I like to know exactly what paint consistency I'm dealing with, and I don't really enjoy an organic process when it comes to paint consistency, because I tend to dial it in to the point where it's exactly where I want it and I love it and I don't want it to change, and a wet palette is going to change it. So I prefer the well palette for that reason. Your mileage may vary. There are the majority of miniature painters out there right now like wet palettes, but at the same time, and I've talked about this a bit, I often feel like these people maybe are having, especially if they're beginner painters, they have actually a longer road or a harder road to understand some techniques because they can't depend on their paint consistency with the wet palette. So for me, I tend to say buy both. But when you're learning, maybe concentrate a bit on the well palette, because it'll let you count drops of water, drops of paint, and it'll let you in that way get a feel for your paint consistency and how to build it and how much water is too much water. And then from there, you can move to the wet palette because you understand what the paint should feel like and what it should look like. And then the wet palette becomes very useful to you because it allows you to like do spot mixes like I did here. But on a wet palette, of course, I'd still have this spot mix and it wouldn't have dried. So, and it's all painting style. I mean, it really is. But I find if I'm going to do a really good job on something, there we go. Good deal. Yeah, the porcelain palette, I adore it. As I said before, my 2 favorite brush lines are Raphael and Da Vinci. Da Vinci was I painted all of my competition pieces with nothing but Da Vinci Series 10 size 1 brushes for the last 20 years. So everything from my Golden Demon days on, like, this is the brush. Like, I've gone through so many of these over the decades. It's not even funny. I love it because it's a good length, a good average length of brush, but it's long and tapered, which I like. I do in case you haven't noticed, I do kind of a longer brush stroke with a thinner brush tip. I find it's very useful for textures. It's very useful for details. It's very useful for getting good blending and good layering. Thicker tipped brushes are better for like wet blends or for, rough block-in painting, which a lot of people use to start with. Let me see, where am I? Yeah, I'm focused. Try to figure out where my focus level is. Yeah, I mean, well, wet palette does have its own learning curve, right, Maggie Jabrock? And that's the thing. Is that I find that for me, it's like, because you can't tell somebody when they're using a wet palette. If I tell them I'm using, a 2-to-1 paint to water ratio, they can't duplicate that, because the minute they add that much water to the paint on their wet palette, it's going to start absorbing. It's going to start wicking down. The minute they put their paint on the wet palette, it's going to start wicking up. So you can't like control it. And you can learn to work around that. But if a person who is starting to learn mini painting has a methodical mind, that's going to frustrate them. They're not going to get it. And it's going to take them a long time to learn what paint consistency should be for various techniques, because they can't reproduce it reliably every painting session. So for me, definitely when somebody starts, you can pick up a wet palette and play with it. It's super fun to play with. And I like to do speed painting with it a lot. But also pick up a well palette. And when you're trying to learn things like layering or glazing and paint consistency, which is one of the key, understanding paint consistency is one of the key things, the key elements of breaking down miniature painting and really getting good at it, then start with that well palette and use it to help you learn what proper paint consistency should look like for a glaze, for a wash, for layering, for blending, you know, all of these things. How thick do I need my white for it to come off and do freehand? You know, that sort of things. If you can't find that well palette in your country, Coding Horse, oh, you're looking at Simple Green. That's what you're looking for. Yeah, any like, yeah, a lot of different cleansers would probably work, but yeah, if you're using a well palette and it's staining, it's not porcelain. There are a lot of like copycats out there. Always look for porcelain or ceramic. These guys, as you can see, I mean, I use the same palette every day, or I've got two of them. I flip back and forth. And yeah, there's a little paint stuck here and there just because I haven't been enthusiastic with my green scrubby. But I throw it in the sink. I put hot water in it. If I've let the paint dry too long, then I also put some spritz of like Method Cleaner, 409, some normal kitchen cleaner in it. A little spritz of that. I'll let it sit for 5 minutes. I come back with a green scrubby and I'm done. It cleans up perfectly. When I was a kid, I took art classes with the 4-H club. We had a 4-H painting teacher who was like a local painter. And we always used the cheapo plastic palettes with her. And I would get so frustrated because I hated that we couldn't clean it. I hated that I could never clean it off. Yeah, dish soap works fine too. It doesn't matter. I find that if the paint has dried, then just a little bit of detergent of any kind is going to help that paint come back up. All right, so the paw's coming up. I think we need our next highlight though. Remember, highlight it until you think it looks good and then take it up 2 more highlights. So let's do that. Let's actually put that little, that's an old painting maxim from 20 years ago that the Imps Paint Club in Illinois, of which I was at that time a member, used to say. Highlight it till you think it looks good, and then throw 2 more highlights on it. So I'm going to switch over a little bit of my golden tan mixture, and I'm going to drop a little bit of white into it. And I'm going to mix it up to get my next gradient. And honestly, if you have a limited paint selection, this is the easiest way to build highlights. I usually recommend that you have a good yellow, like lantern or lemon or clear yellow or candlelight. Some of them are more orangey, some are not, and the white. That way, if you're doing something like greens or oranges or tans like this, and you find, like we did, that it maybe goes a little bit kind of flat, you can add a little yellow to it to liven it up. But I think that really a couple of good yellows and white, pure white, these are the only highlighting tools you need. If you just want to start, well, okay, I'll qualify that. And clear magenta for purples. So that should pretty much allow you to build good highlights for any color. Clear magenta, lemon yellow or clear yellow, lantern yellow or candlelight yellow, and pure white. If you have those tools, all you ever have to buy ever again are midtones and shadows. You never have to buy a highlight color ever again. Cool. Just looking at you guys talking, chatting about your stripping tools that I never use. Oh, I don't know what it is, but I just had such poor luck with all the strippers, and some of them are a little bit toxic. Like, some people use, like, brake fluid and stuff for metal minis, and I'm just like, not so much. Let me see here. Let me get focused. Let me get in. There we go. So this paw is looking okay. I maybe need to, like, blend it a little bit better. But really now with my top highlights, what I'm going to concentrate on are this little nubby of skin right at the edge of the paw. And part of why I'm doing that is that I'm going to leave that dark line. Her paws may go light. I don't know. I haven't decided on claw color yet. But I'm going to leave a little line of that dark shadow there. So essentially I want contrast. And so I'm putting a highlight right here at the end of the finger. Kind of to say that the skin poofs out a little bit there, like it does here. The skin poofs out around the nail and catches the light. See it catching the light here? So it makes sense then that you'd get something similar with Miss Sphinx. So highlight right up next to your claws. And then remember to leave that little bit of dark line when you go to highlight the claws. Looking. Yeah, I just don't strip minis. I guess if I'm gonna mess up a mini, I'm gonna know that I've messed it up really quick. So I guess that's part of it. And at that point, it's so easy for me to just spray over it. Even minis that I've painted, a fair bit of, I'll just prime over the top as long as my paint is always so thin. If I haven't obscured any detail, which I'm pretty much never gonna do, because I never put my paint on thick, I don't need strippers. And I've always, like I said, in the old days, I had such poor luck with them. They just never made the model look clean to me. And I got better results just priming over it and repainting it. All right, so I've got a little bit of an extra highlight there on the top of the paw. Probably want to hit a little bit down here, just a tiny bit. You don't want to have your highlights be the same all over. Her paw's turned to the side, so this lower area wouldn't get as high of a highlight. However, I did not hit it with the previous highlight, so I do need to do that. Just on the top of this finger, because the rest of the paw is really turning to the side, so you don't want to cover the whole finger with that color like you did up here. Up here, these are definitely facing the light. So this is, again, an example of think about where the light is coming from when you are placing your highlights. That's pretty good. Then we've got this thumb over here. Let me see how much light is going to hit that. Again, not a lot, except right where it sticks out here. So make sure I've got a highlight my previous color. And you can see how just using the fine tip, I'm really just painting with this tiny little tip on this brush. It gives you the control to paint these little details. Yeah. I don't know, once it has paint on it, I'm just kind of like, meh, I just want to buy a new one. If you like the old metal stuff, that makes sense. I still have a couple of old metal figures. Do I have my baby Hydra up here anywhere? Usually I have my little mascot baby Hydra sitting out. He's an old Grenadier, I think. There are a couple models from those old days that I've kept just because they are good sculpts even for that. Like, even though they're old. But I get so excited about new models, the amazing new sculpts coming out nowadays, that I find it hard to want to put the time into the old guys as much. There we go. We've got that paw coming around. If you find like old stuff like that, like Grenadier or Alpartha, you totally should bring it to ReaperCon when we have ReaperCon again and show Julie, because chances are she sculpted some of that. And when there's something really old that's like been out of print for a very long time, sometimes the sculptors really like to see their old work. They'll be like, oh, I'd forgotten I sculpted that. It's really funny. Did you show her some of those, Varl, ever at a ReaperCon? Because, yeah, Julie gets a kick out of it. Because, yeah, she really is. She's just like, yeah, often I forget I've even sculpted these. And then you guys bring them to the con, and it's awesome because I get to see them again. Because she sculpted so many minis. You just can't remember them all. It's like I've forgotten minis I painted. I know I have. Like, every once in a while, when I go to visit George in Santa Fe, you know, he's got several of my minis in his collection. And, I'll be like, oh, yeah, I did paint that, didn't I? It's just so sad. Oh, memory problems. All right, so now this arm's really coming up, and now it looks like a different material, see? And yet, it still works with the rest of the skin tone, because we still have enough colors in common. So, though when you're trying to do that, when your model is changing shape or changing from one substance to another, or you've got a surface that, you know, that changes from one surface to another on a model, Kind of if you can have a color in common between them, that helps with that illusion. Oh yeah, the fantasy person. She did so much. Julie's done so much great stuff in her lifetime though with these sculpts. Hey there, Ninja Me Timbers. Good to meet you. I'm Anne. Me and disembodied voice Justin run this show for Reaper Pro Tips, where I sit and paint various things and talk about random stuff, including brushes and palettes and things like that. Which I just went off on a rant about brushes, which you kind of missed, but that's okay. I'll go off on another rant about brushes. Just give me, 20 minutes. Right now we're talking about old miniature sculpts. So like Julie Guthrie, who still sculpts for Reaper and has done some of the best dragons we have ever had in our line. She had been sculpting for old companies like Relpartha and Grenadier back in the day. She's been sculpting forever. She's been sculpting for longer than I've been painting, and I've been painting for 30 years. So there, I got a little bit, had to pick out some of those hairs there to get that fur to come out there on the Sphinx's arm. So we're painting a Sphinx, actually, and it is sculpted by Julie Guthrie. So speak of the devil. Oh yeah, you came to Virtual ReaperCon. Good. Very happy to hear it. Yeah, ReaperCon in person is even more fun, although even more exhausting. All right, I'm gonna make one more highlight, guys. Remember what I said? Highlight it till you think it looks good, then do 2 more highlights. So I'm gonna take just a little bit of this again because I've got a bigger puddle of that. It's about the same amount I used last time, but instead of 1 drop of white, I'll probably use 2 drops and see how that looks. Boop, boop. Want it really light now. Now, because I'm adding so much white, I'm going to have to add a crap ton of water to get it to layer correctly. Otherwise, it's just going to leave brush strokes everywhere. Yeah, that's good right there. So you can definitely see, you can see my layering progression colors now. Right? We go from here to here to here to here. And you can definitely see a difference in each color as far as what it looks like. And that's what you're looking for with your layering. I disagree, Val, because when you use, even if you're really a beginner painter, if you try using a crappy Taklon and you try using a brush like this, Raphael, you're going to get different results, for sure. Like I said, that's why I tell people all the time, getting a better brush levels you up. Now, remember guys, brush loading, right? I am only dipping this much of the brush into the paint with this big brush, only about 1/4 of the brush. And then I'm wiping it all off so that I can do a really thin, let's see if we can get it. Yeah, there we go. Really thin line, totally controlled. That's the name of the game with really thin paint, is control. Just going to do one final highlight on the top of the toe. Just a little bit, where the area where it's really perpendicular to the light. Tiny bit of there. And this sort of strong light, bringing in this sort of strong light, very selective strong light, is what makes it look like the model's actually out in the sunlight, where you can see the highlights and shadows falling down, right? So like so. That really brings that paw out. Hey, Cooves! Woo, 13 months. It's your super lucky resub. Oh, you're in Canada. Yeah, it was great for a lot of people, right? Because a lot of our European friends can't come over, and our Asian friends can't come over either, right, Ninja? So it was good for cool everybody. Dropper bottles are fine with cabin pressure, Cooves. I've done it for years. When you first open them, if you've gone to a slightly different elevation than you started at, just open them slowly and make sure they're upright. Because sometimes a little pressure will make some paint bubble out, and just clean the nozzle, you're good. Like, honestly, I've been flying with paint for years. It's just fine. Don't let that keep you from coming to ReaperCon. It is not a real concern. At worst, I sometimes open one and have it bubble out and get really enthusiastic at me, and I'm like, oh dang! But, little Kleenex or paper towel fixes everything. It's all good. Let's see here. Amberden, actually, we talked about this. I use a well palette every time. Every time. I have used a wet palette on the show before. I use it for speed painting when I use it. The reason I prefer a well palette is that I have absolute control of the paint consistency that I build. I can build it to exactly the correct consistency for layering or blending or whatever I'm doing. And then it'll stay that way for a decent amount of time as long as I have a big enough paint puddle. So this is a 28 well palette. It's, here, let me zoom out real quick. So this is from Cheap Joe's Art Supply here in the US. You might be able to find it as a porcelain mixing tray or a porcelain palette, 28 well porcelain palette overseas as well. I'm not sure where you get them though over there. I use this because these are actually very small. You see they're much smaller than usual. My thumb fits pretty much in one. What this allows me to do is mix very deep puddles of paint with only a few drops of paint. So I can essentially put in 6 or 8 drops of paint, add my water and my additives as necessary. Oop, boing, a little bit too close. And then it's going to stay good because essentially I'm increasing the ratio between the surface exposed to the air and the depth. So surface tension or surface evaporation is minimized if you make a deeper pool. So these guys are going to stay good for longer at exactly the consistency I need. These guys I would have to build up or add. I mixed that one for a quick highlight, so I'm not so much concerned with it because I'm done with it. But this guy will probably start to evaporate in like 10 minutes, and if I want it to stay good, I'll have to add a drop of water at that point. Really, if I want more of this, if I wanted more of this color, I should have mixed a deeper paint puddle of it. But that's key, is like just, you know, if you're going to use a well palette, use one with smaller wells that are deeper and make big puddles. And then I could go through maybe 45 minutes, an hour before I have to add water to kind of readjust. So, but the key is there that it stays at exactly what I want. A problem with a wet palette is that it instantly will start to alter your paint's consistency. So you're pretty much hand mixing every brushful every time you paint. Some people really like that. I don't. I like to dial in my paint to get the perfect effect, whatever I'm doing, be it textures or smooth blending, and then, have it be there while I work on the area of the model that I need it to be that way for. Hey, and we've summoned Bob and Julie. Well, our sculptors are in the chat, everybody. Bob and Julie, we were just talking about a lot of old Grenadier and Raoul Partha figures, and I mentioned that anybody who has some vintage stuff should bring it to the next ReaperCon so that you guys can say, oh yeah, we sculpted that ages ago. I forgot I sculpted that. Just like I run into models that I forgot I painted, because I painted it 16 years ago. But yeah, so Julie, Green Users is Bob Rodolfi and Julie Guthrie. Julie Guthrie sculpted this beautiful Sphinx that we are working on. Julie, I was just working on making her hands be more lion hands. I don't need it, Amberden. One thing you want to know, okay, you may be new. I actually created Reaper's paint line for them. I created Master Series paints. Like, it's my baby from the ground up. I mixed every batch myself for 15 years, and I created all the colors. So what I'm going to tell you is paint chemistry. So retarder, when you add it to your paint, be aware, it will change the finish and it will change the adhesion. And I decided I used to use a little bit of it in my mixture of water, but I found that over time, I just wanted to do the palette instead, and the deeper paint puddles essentially made my need for any retarder pretty much go away. And I didn't like what it was doing to my paint. I didn't like the shininess that I sometimes got from it, and I really didn't like that it made the paint softer. So it affects the finish, it affects the adhesion and the durability of your paint to use retarder. So be aware when you use it very minimally. I don't find I need it because now I just build, big deep paint puddles and my paint doesn't need it to stay wet. The only additive that I add nowadays at all is extra flow improver if I think I need it. Reaper paints all have flow improver already added. So all you need is water to work with these paints. And usually that's what you see me adding, water. On occasion, I do have a bottle of mixed up flow improver that's just extra Reaper flow improver. That if I'm doing really fine details or really tiny details, like the little highlights in her eyes or something, sometimes I find that a little extra flow improver will help. So that is pretty much why. Otherwise, I don't use any additives. Unless I'm building a wash. If I build a wash, I do find that either you can use a matte medium Or if you're using Reaper, the brush-on sealer that we use actually makes a fantastic stand-in for matte medium, and it seals your mini. So I usually build my washes by adding in a little bit of brush-on sealer in addition to water. But those are the additives that I use. The other Reaper additive that is useful in some cases, if you're working with glossy paint. Sometimes a paint will just seem a little bit glossier than what you like. And anti-shine additive is the one that we use. This is actually a variant on the actual flatting medium that we use for Master Series. So it's totally compatible with MSP. I have yet to find a paint that it doesn't work with, as far as, it works with GW, it works with Scale 75, it works with Vallejo. So that's also a useful medium. But in general, when you see me paint on this show, it's going to be I'm adding water, and that's it. I don't really find a lot of additives useful, and I don't like how they affect the paint. So there we go. But that's great news, Soltor. Now you have an excuse to order online and get a ghoulie bag. Like, you can get candy from Reaper, because you could order from our online store. And if you're going to order paint, that's even better, because you get the freshest paint if you order direct from Reaper. Yes, exactly. It's glycerol or glycerin. It's a humectant. It essentially just gathers moisture to itself, and that's why it impinges on things. Ghoulie bag is a mini, a paint, and candy. Coating horse. Or usually 2 paints, actually. I lied. I'm sorry. I haven't had to make them this year since I'm no longer working on site for Reaper. So ghoulie bag is usually at least 1 mini, 2 paints, and candy. See, yeah, it's so sad that people don't carry MSP, especially with the Bones line being so small. Like, really, we tried to keep the Bones line smaller and have a tabletop, a countertop rack, so that it would appeal to stores that were on a budget. Because I worked for a small game store. I know they're on a tight budget. But sometimes they just don't get it. It's a hobby treat bag. It is. Oh, this year's is, she brought back Hallowed Orange. Yeah, because we actually got an original bottle of Hallowed Orange from Rhonda. So we were able to reconstruct the original Hallowed Orange because of that. Yes, and Brains Pink. It's Sadie in charge of the department. Of course you're going to get pink. Come on, guys. Yeah, you get 1 ghoulie bag per order if over $40. Yeah, I really love the dropper bottles. I mean, obviously I created a dropper bottle paint line, right, Ninja? So kind of figured that I like dropper bottles. The paint pots are just, they dry out so fast, and then they get the cruddy, crumbly stuff around the top, and that flakes into your paint, and then your paint isn't smooth anymore. It's just not ideal. Run a painting class, Disfamist, and promote the paint. Or tell them to watch my stream. Yeah, I mean, our warehouse is in the UK. We made that decision before Brexit, sadly, Coating Horse. But at least you guys have a European source. Yes, you do also get the BCA Pink. That's true. That is also the October promotion. And BCA Pink is a really useful color for highlighting purples. Yeah, yes, Glacia, we try. Like, we really try. Having worked for Reaper for, golly, it's 17 and a half years now that I've worked for Reaper, even though I'm only part-time now. And over the years, I have watched the company's commitment to customer service has always been high. Which is smart, right? When you're a small company, I think customer service really makes and breaks you. But to be able to retain good customer service as a large company is a huge challenge. And I think Reaper has done well with it. So I need to blend a little. So I'm going to wet blend a little here. I'm going to grab some of my ebony flesh and smush it into my tan here. It's very strong, so I have to use just a little, and then I kind of wiped the rest off of my brush. And I'm trying to just kind of work it in down into the hand. You can see how it kind of is smooshing around a bit. Wet blending is a messy, messy deal, but it can help you blend 2 colors that are very different into each other. And all you need is that starting point to blend. Then you can tighten it with layering. So you can be messy with your wet blending. It's okay if you're messy with your wet blending. Then you can go And maybe block in your highlights a little bit more on that paw. Honestly, if you're looking to get a paint set, if you also want tutorials, get the Learn to Paint kit, Saltor. If you just want paint because you think you're pretty solid on the essentials, then you know, get either the first core set or get the bones set, the first 54 bones colors. I find that the bones paint was actually Pathfinder was the last thing I did, but the bones paint set is actually the thing I was proudest of that I've made for Reaper. I really feel like it's a very solid set. Really useful. So it's as useful as the core set. What core has going for it is like some of the specialty colors, the primers, the additives, the clear brights, the liners, you know, all those odd, those really, those kind of unique paints. But for just a general color set, I like the bones. Clear blue Ghost King and the 2 paints. Yeah, okay. And then there's the candy. Nope, not at all. Just call me dirt. I'm really hard on brushes. It's amazing that these Kolinsky sables stay good for years when they're in my care. But all I do is point them. Like I make sure that I leave them in pretty good points. Always remember, the reason that you put a medium or something in your brushes to keep it pointed when you're not using it. The only reason to do that is if you are retraining a brush that kind of, you know, has issues and you're trying to train it to have a better shape. I can leave my brushes hanging out, and yes, they will poof. Like, okay, here's your poofy. Can we see it there? Poofy brush, poofy brush, right? Okay, there you see it. This is a poofy brush. It is a very high quality Kolinsky sable. I will dip it in the water. I will point it. As long as it comes to its natural great point when it is wet, it is a fine brush. There is no problem. I did not need to wax it. All that matters, your brushes can look terrible when you leave them sitting around. But as long as they come to this beautiful, perfect point when they are, you know, wetted down, because that's when you're going to use them, then you're fine. Yeah, I mean, and I've been painting for a very, very long time. So, I mean, I kind of abuse my brushes, to be honest, but I still managed to make these really good ones last at least. If I abuse them thoroughly and I'm really painting a lot, I can, you know, probably get 6 months to a year out of one of these really good ones. And it'll hold a perfect point up until the end. And I don't clean them either. Like, the only time I clean them is if I notice, like, this guy is getting a little bit of discoloration down there at the ferrule. So from that, I know that some paint is starting to build up. So at that point, I'll probably grab my Winsor & Newton brush cleaner and restorer, and I'll just deal with it just a little bit. But otherwise, I really don't clean my brushes. I rinse my brushes so frequently when I'm painting that I find that I often don't need to. I don't see paint buildup. Ah, you just bought the Series 7, yeah. So Series 7, I don't have one in front of me right now, but I have used them. But yeah, just, I mean, if you want to, probably the best thing to do for them, if you're going to point them, don't use wax. Use a little bit of hair conditioner. That's actually better. It moisturizes the hairs of the brush so they don't dry out and get brittle. You get less breakage that way. And there's no reason to use wax. Wax makes no sense to me. That's ridiculous. For one thing, if you're waxing your brush, unless you wash it, and that's going to strip the oils off of it. But I mean, wax is just going to kind of coat your hairs and keep the paint from sticking to them. I don't know why you'd ever wax them. Like, when you get a new brush, you'll see that there is it's been kind of glued together with a compound to keep it in a good shape. But, I need a bigger brush for this. Where's my mixing brush? Need to add some water to my paint here. But yeah, I mean, I'm really tough on brushes, and I still manage to make these suckers last a good long time. I do think that the fact that I regularly rinse and reload my brushes does make a difference. Oh, okay. I see. Yeah, when people do that, when they put something, it's either pink brush soap that they use, or which is a cleaner and conditioner, or like I said, just use hair conditioner. If anybody in your household uses conditioner in their hair, it doesn't matter what brand, it doesn't matter. But just use that. Like, that'll moisturize the hairs and actually should add some life to your brush. All right, I'm once again coming in and just trying to do a little bit more shading here. I have a fairly dark shadow between the fingers on the other hand, so I want to keep that going. So I might even almost line it at this point. Kind of blocking in. Don't need to be precise when you start. You can just block. Don't worry about your brush strokes or anything else. Just figure out where your shadows and highlights are and go for it. Most important thing, just figure out where your shadows and highlights are. Kind of blending in this upper arm area with this shadow color. I need to get the back of the arm because I haven't done it. Yeah, declearment has a good suggestion. Put a little conditioner in a travel size bottle, or just buy a little bottle of conditioner, travel conditioner. Yeah, Master's brush cleaner, that's what I was just talking about, the pink soap. But if you don't want to buy an extra product, just use conditioner. Up to you. Some people love to get extra tools for their stuff, and sometimes I do. Sometimes I am one of those people. All right, I'm going to paint the back of her arm because I totally forgot to do it. Oops. I'm going to go all dark back here for the beginning. Now I'm using my paint pretty thin on top of bones, and no, I did not prime this model. I get away with that because I wash the model before I paint it. So I actually get away with using very thin paint on these bones. Usually you want to use full strength paint, but if you have a little of extra time, I find that your mileage may get more mileage out of it if you wash it the night before with just a little bit of hot water and dish soap. And you can use thinner paint when you want to, and you won't get frustrated. Lol. Hot oil treatments for all the brushes. It's brush spa. Take my brushes to the brush spa. Hey there, ASMR. It's good. Yeah, we did these yesterday. We did them actually over the last couple days. I wanted her to have that kind of like, ooh, is this edible? look on her face. Is this thing walking into my lair edible? Is it tasty? She's got that look of the cat that's just seen the bird. That's what I wanted. Priming is not necessary, except, Saltor, if you're doing metal or resin models. Then priming is not optional. Because you will find you see a lot more rub off of paint if you do not prime metal or resin models. Or plastic, most plastic. Bones, PVC, you can get away with just painting right on it. But, like I said, I wash it beforehand. You will find that there are huge and passionate camps of people on both sides of this issue. Yeah, if you're losing detail when you prime, you're probably putting a little bit too much primer on. You want a real light spray of primer usually. Unless you're working with some huge model where you can really like get the primer on, like Bus. Bus you could be a little thicker because, you know, your detail on something like this huge honking guy. Like this guy, this huge honking orc. Yeah, I could prime this and not lose any detail. He's cool. I like him. I have to show him off every once in a while. But when you're working with small models, yes, it is possible to glob up detail. Absolutely. And in that case, with working with smaller models, you just want to use less primer. You don't need a lot. You just need a really light coat. What the primer does, chemically... Yeah. Yeah, it is, Don Giovanni. I love it. I'm so happy. I can't wait to start him, but I'm working on a different bust right now, and I've told myself I won't cheat. So the other bust is from Mr. Lee's, and she's a rocket queen in a power suit. I really love her. But that's the other one I'm working on, and I really want to get her more done before I start the orc. But the orc is lovely. The orc is absolutely a phenomenal sculpt. Yeah, you found a hot button issue, Suter, you're right. If you're going over metal, Welsh Gamer Guy, as long as you've got a little bit. Okay, so guys, chemically, this is what primer does. Primer interacts with the surface of the model, and there are chemicals in primer that micro etch that surface, that make tiny weaknesses, they think of primer as having tiny little cat claws that dig into the mini. So once they micro make those little like fissures, those little etchings, the primer can cling to it better. So that's why priming a metal model makes it rub off less, is because you actually the primer goes on and it sinks its little tiny claws into that surface and it clings better than paint will. And then the primer itself has a better surface for the paint to cling to. That's how primer works, period. So, given that, if you get a thin coat of primer, as long as it's not beading up, but as long as you get a nice thin coat of primer over the whole model, you should be pretty good. That said, again, you do not have to prime bones. You can just do what I do and toss them in a bowl of hot water with a bit of dish soap, swoosh them around, rinse them really well, and let them dry overnight. And then I can even use thinned paint over these, and it's just fine. It covers just fine. I never prime my bones, ever. I've had more issues trying to prime bones than I've had issues not priming bones. Therefore, yeah, I have a lot of Black Sun. I do really like their sculpts. I was just showing off their cat dude, their Khajiit Arabic cat dude the other day on my own stream. Yeah, I try to explain everything a lot, Glacia, and don't, if you're new, just ask the questions, because you aren't the only new person out there, so everybody can benefit, right? But yes, that's what primer does chemically. I learned a lot of paint chemistry when I was working for Reaper and developing Master Series paint, and I tried to kind of pass that on, because it's good not only to know that something does a thing, but why it does a thing. Why does primer work? Why is it important? Now you know. Yeah, I don't know about Army Painter paint. They might be using they'll probably using a bit of a more fragile base. Because you definitely get some differences there, Welsh Gamer Guy, with brand, because every paint line has a different base, and the base is where the resins are. So when you hear things like vinyl paint or acrylic latex paint, nowadays they're all synthetic versions of that. But those are resins: acrylic, vinyl, latex. They used to use styrene. There's a whole bunch of different ones, and essentially it's plastics, right? It's different versions of plastic resins. And every one of those resins acts differently. It's going to have a different coverage factor. It's going to have a different transparency factor. It's going to have different hardness or softness. Now, the paints that go for high coverage out the gate are innately more fragile and more prone to rub off, because to get that coverage, they have to use a higher coverage resin. The problem is that when you use a higher coverage resin, it's innately more fragile. The reason is kind of akin to putting sand in a jar versus putting rocks in a jar. You know how when you put rocks in a jar, they're really big, but they leave a lot of gaps between them? And when you put sand in a jar, it can really pack down. So when you're dealing with a resin that's maybe more transparent, it also has a higher hardness, so it has a greater durability on the model. When you're dealing with a resin that has high coverage, you're dealing with rocks. It covers really well, it blocks the light really well, but it's really fragile. It's easy to just pluck a couple rocks off the top of that, or brush a couple rocks off the top of that. So that's why, because it's less compact, it compacts less efficiently. Like, that is actually how paint resins work. It is very common sense. And that is why Reaper Master Series does not go for a high coverage approach. We do have higher coverage paints, but we tried to do it by using higher density pigments with better coverage instead of changing the paint base. Because nothing frustrates me more than doing a great paint job and then having it rub off. Like, back in the day when I used Vallejo, I just wanted to jump off a cliff sometimes because it was so frustrating. So when I went and made Master Series, I tried to go, even though I knew that I was going in a different direction from everybody else in the industry, I went for a little bit sacrificed coverage in exchange for durability. It also allows us to do more things with transparency in our paints. A lot of them will make better washes for that reason, or better glazes, because they have that transparency. And of course, they're durable. So there, paint chemistry for all you guys for today. It's Paint Chemistry Thursday. Little did we know. I could go on and on. There's so much. There's so much awesome in the world of paint chemistry. But in general, that's why Master Series, the main criticism I hear of Master Series is it doesn't cover, it's not the absolutely high coverage paints like a lot of other lines go for. But the fact is that it does everything else better. When you get to trying to thin it for glazes or layering, you get there a lot easier with less issues, less separation. That's the other feature of high coverage paints is almost always, unless they've done something chemically to prevent it, when you thin them, they separate. If you love us and you learn so much from us, do think about subbing to us. A sub for my show is a vote for my show. Reaper does track like how much money, how many subs we get for the shows, and it keeps me and Justin in peanuts, right, Justin? Are you out there?
Yes, I am, and that's absolutely correct.
Yeah, so we do depend on subs a little bit, even though Reaper's a big company, and it's not like you might think, oh, Reaper doesn't need sub money, but Reaper had to be convinced to put a portion of their manpower and effort into producing shows like this. So when we do well with subs, it essentially convinces the powers that be to allow us to continue to stream, which Justin and I both like very much. So yes, if you have extra sub monies or an extra Prime sub that's just sitting around, if you learn a lot from my show, please do toss us your Prime sub sometime. We absolutely will appreciate it. And it helps to rationalize our existence. Oh, too much. So I got puddles there. So I had too much paint on my brush. It's very easy when you start thinning your paint. And you do need to thin it to get these nice blended effects. But it's very easy to put too much on your brush. So when we start with our highlighting here, brush loading and unloading is really important. So we only load up a little bit of paint on the brush. And I'm going to take a lot of it off. The thinner your paint gets, the more you have to unload to get control. You can prime the bones models if you want, as long as you're getting good... yes, bits count too, Coding Horse. Thank you for the cheer. Yep. And that's why. It's because of the resins, Jabberwock. Especially when you're thinning Vallejo. Like, I used to have a joke when I used to use Vallejo, when it was the best paint out there, that all you had to do was breathe on it funny and Vallejo would rub off. That's a little bit excessive of a statement, but it's funny because it's kind of true. All right, so now I've got my paint consistency to where I want it, so it's much easier to make these nice blends. And I can just keep working with that paint consistency. And because I'm working on a well palette, I don't have to remix my dang paint every time I grab a new brush full. Instead, I know that at least, even if I have very little paint in the well, as I do with this color, I know it's going to hold for at least 10 or 15 minutes, and that's going to be enough for me to highlight this paw. Now, if I want it to last because I intend to come back to that color later, then I probably want to build a bigger paint puddle of it. Or add a little more water just right off the bat, expecting evaporation. Yeah, exactly, Bandar. See, that's why I think transparency is really, really underrated in paint marketing. Like, I think these companies that are making paint these days are not painters. Like, or maybe Army Painter, like, they probably did start because they loved to paint armies, right? But that's what they do. So their paint is geared toward that. So it's going to be a higher coverage paint, which is great, except when you try to market to a market outside of that and you don't really know what you're marketing to and you're not sure where you should go with it. You always want somebody who's actually using the product in the way that it's intended to be, which is why Reaper, when they hired me as a staff painter, that's why they also assigned me the task of making the paint line. Because, if you're making the paint, you know what you want, you know what you need to get good results, so you're able to choose the right products from the get-go, so that you can get nice blends, even when you're dealing with colors that are very different from each other. I didn't fully highlight this arm with the ruddy flesh, so I'm going to have to come back in a little bit, make sure that I've got some of that blocked in, so that everything blends in nicely. Oh, are they, Bandar? Yeah, I haven't looked much at them. Just a little bit. I discovered I didn't like their primer very much, but other than that. I have problems seeing with black, Varl. I can do something in black these days, but I usually try to do the Zenith Prime thing where you put a thin layer of white over the top of the black to bring out details, like with that orc that I showed and with the Valkyrie suit lady too. So that I find that I like it like this. So that way all the details come out and you kind of know where your highlights are because the primer tells you, but you've still got black primer in the shadow areas to remind you where to paint shadows. Stuff like that. I do like the Zenith thing these days. I use it more than I never used to use it. I always just used a light gray primer, and there are some models I still use just a light gray primer on because I find that I can see a little better there. But hey there, Rax. Waves back to you. Yeah, and most painters do over in Eel. Like before I started working for Reaper and made my own paint line, at that point, you kind of have to stop and use your own paint line, like if you believe in yourself, right? But before that, I used everything. I used Royal Partha, I used Poly S, I used tube paints, I used, Grenadier, I used, Reaper Pro paint, I used Vallejo, you name it, if it was out there. And as new paint lines came out, I was always, again, very eager to try them. And using all that really gives you an idea for colors and for like just different lines that might suit different styles, right? Different techniques might be better with this line's paint than with others. So it's very useful to be, as I call it, a paint mercenary. Especially when if you're not creating your own paint line like yours truly, there's no reason you should just stick to one paint line unless you find one that is absolutely what you've been looking for. Like, if there is a paint line and you, try it and you're like, wow, this technique is so much easier with this paint line and I love how it does this, then by all means, don't feel guilty if you stop using your other paints. Some people, back in the day, I started using all Vallejo because I just felt that although it was hard to work with, once I got it to the consistency I wanted, it was much smoother than any other paint line. It just took forever to get there. And then I hated the rub off. But Vallejo was, once I settled on that and I realized that it suited my style, I started using Vallejo for everything unless there was a specific color that Reaper or Partha made that I really just loved and didn't want to give up. But I do find that, after a while I would settle on a particular line. So yeah, her front paws are coming up really nice. Yay. Front paws. Really smooth too. I'm liking it. I need to bring up the highlights more on her off shoulder still. But I didn't quite bring up this hand quite as much as I did this hand. Now, hi there, Kiri. What's up? The door is open, so the doglet is roaming around. I'm keeping an eye on her. Hi, face. Do you want some pettins? Yeah, you do want some pettins. You have a happy face right now. I probably won't bring up my highlights quite as much on this down paw as on this up paw, depending on how I want my light sourcing to go. If I'm trying to do a very strong light source from overhead, this arm is going to pick up more light than this arm that's kind of pointed down. So I'll still use my second to highest highlight, and I'll use it on the upper portion of the arm. Oh, little puddly, little too much paint. Gonna wipe some of it off on my fingernail and go again. There. So just a little touch does make a difference. But I'll probably stick to anything that kind of sticks out and will catch the light. And then I probably won't go any higher. I might go a little bit more up here on this upper part of the arm. That's a little bit high. I'm going to grab some of my base and knock that down. I'll often do a spot wet blend like that. If I put down a color and right away I know it's too light or I don't like it very much, I'll just come in with my shadow color. It's why I like having all my colors open in my palette. And I'll knock it down with a little bit of wet blending. Now, we have this fur here that I made very light on the other side. So I do need to paint that fur quite light. And I need to lighten up the paw down here because this is all just base coat on the back still. Ooh, it's quarter after 11. I guess I should probably wrap this up. Time flies when you're having Sphinxy fun. So, people, it's Thursday. Those of you who know me know that that means it's D&D stream day over on my Twitch channel this afternoon. So at 4:30 p.m.ish Central USA time, we're world building our D&D world. We're having fun with that. And I'll be painting a little bit while we do that as well. But we're developing some NPCs today and maybe some factions. There's some cool stuff to do. So I hope to see many of you over there as we do that. I think I'm going to hold it there. Do we have anybody cool to raid, Justin?
Sorry, I stood up for a second. Yeah, we do. Let's see here.
Justin looks for a cool raid. Just going to kind of touch this up just a little bit. There, I think those front paws, the front arms, let's zoom out on her. That's always the test, right, guys? Yeah. Yeah, those cat arms are looking pretty cool. And then when we bring the fur in, it'll be this same selection of colors. No, I haven't, Ninja. I'm very much. I started doing D&D when I was 9, so it's been a long time. I'm an inveterate world builder. I love to build my own world. And I'm using what is it? Anvil, World Anvil, to document stuff that we essentially world build on the stream and decide a bunch of stuff. I'm trying to essentially roleplay with my entire Twitch community. It's fun. We're only on our 3rd stream this week.
So we'll be streaming, or not streaming. We'll be rating Art of Mike Disney.
Okay, yay for Mike Disney. Everybody go over and say hello to Mike for me. I hope you've enjoyed Sphinxy. Remember, tomorrow is our AMA and giveaway, so if you want to win a big mini or you want to AMA the heck out of me, go put your questions in an AMA in the Reaper Discord, and we will get through as many as we can tomorrow. I'm looking forward to it, and I hope, welcome to all the new people who came today. There were a lot of new people today. I hope you had fun, and I hope you come back. It's every day, 11:30 a.m. USA Central Time. I'm here every weekday. All right. Have a great one, everybody, and I'll see you later. Say hi to Mike.
Thank you guys very much. That's an Ask Me Anything, Amberden. Meaning you can show up. She'll be reading out of the Discord, though. She won't be taking that many questions from chat because there's a long queue of questions, as you can imagine. But if we happen to get through all of those, then, of course, she will take questions from chat if we need to. But go to the Reaper Discord, check out the Reaper Toolbox channel and AMA section, and put your questions in there for tomorrow. And we are giving away stuff, big stuff. So thank you guys very much. I'll see you at about 3 o'clock for Painting Platinum. Thank you guys very much.